Here we are at Mission 6, Lesson 13, where our student objective is to add decimal numbers by converting to fraction form. So we're going to be adding two decimal numbers today, and we're going to be seeing how if we convert them to fractions, we can easily solve them because we know how to add fractions pretty easily, and we're going to see what that looks like in comparison to decimals and how we can use the skills of adding fractions to help us add decimals. Our first example wants us to add 4 7/10 plus 5 5/10. All right. So again, the skill we're using today is we want to convert these into fractions and then add them and then rename them again as a decimal. So we're starting as a decimal, we're going to fraction form, and then we're going back to decimal. So if we have 4 7/10 and 5 5/10, the first thing I need to do is to rewrite these as fractions. So if I have 4 7/10, how would I rewrite that? Well, I have 4 wholes and 7/10, just like that. And then plus 5 5/10, well, we rewrite that as 5 wholes and 5/10, like such. Now I can add them. So the first thing I'm going to do, remember, I'm just going to add the whole numbers. So 4 plus 5 is 9. And then I'm going to add the fractions. So 7/10 plus 5/10. Well, 7 plus 5 is 12. And then remember our denominator, 10, stays the same. So I have 9 and 12/10. Now here's the thing. We cannot leave it as 9 and 12/10. And why can't we leave it as 9 and 12/10? That's right, you're absolutely correct, because it's an improper fraction, and 12/10 is worth more than 1 whole. So I need to go ahead and rename the 12/10. So again, if I pull out 10/10, or that's the same as saying we're pulling out 1 whole right there, because 10/10 is equal to 1. Okay, what am I left with? If I take away 10 from the 12, I'm left with 2/10. So 12/10 is the same as 1 and 2/10. So I already had the 9 wholes, so I just need to combine the 9 wholes that I already had right here with 1 and 2/10. So 9 plus 1 is 10, and then 2/10. All right. So now I've gotten to this point where I have it as a mixed number. This is a proper fraction. It's not improper anymore. So the final step is I want to take this number, 10 and 2/10, and write it in decimal form. Okay. So I have 10 wholes, so I'm just going to rewrite that as 10. And instead of using a fraction, I'm going to use decimal. And I have 2/10. How do I write 2/10? Well, I put a 2 in the tenths place, which is that place right after the decimal. And that would be my solution. My sum of 5 7/10 plus 5 5/10. The answer to that is 10 and 2/10, like such. So notice how we just converted it to a fraction and then converted it back into a decimal. Now, let's take a look at one where we're going to throw a little curveball at you, because now we have 5 9/10 plus 8 48 hundredths. Now, what's the curveball here? If you haven't picked up on it, is that we have 9/10 and 48 hundredths. So these are going to be in different units. But as we've seen, we can rename tenths as hundredths pretty easily. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite. Actually, let's start with the 8 48 hundredths, just so we can see what that looks like. So I have 8 wholes and 48 hundredths. And notice here, I am in hundredths. And now for 5 and 9/10, well, if I wrote 5 and 9/10 as it is, it would be 5 and 9/10. And why does this not work again? Because that's in tenths. The other one's in ninths. I need to convert the tenths to ninths in order to add them. So what does 5 and 9/10 equal in hundredths? Well, 9/10 in hundredths is equal to 90 hundredths. 90 hundredths. So again, 5 and 9/10 is equal to 5 and 90 hundredths. Now I can go ahead and add them. And I'm going to go ahead and add my whole numbers. 5 plus 8. 5 plus 8 equals 13 wholes. And then I have to add my fractions. So 90 plus 48. And then it'll end up in hundredths. So 90 plus 48. Just do it off to the side here real quick. 8 plus 0 is 8. 9 plus 4 is 13. So I have 138 hundredths. 138 hundredths. Now, just like our previous problem, can I convert it into a decimal again yet? I cannot, because 138 hundredths is an improper fraction. I need to convert this into a mixed number, a proper fraction, before I can do that. So I'm just going to take the 138 hundredths, and I'm going to pull out a whole number. And again, if I'm in hundredths, how many hundredths make a whole number? 100 hundredths make a whole number. So which is equal to 1 whole. And then if I had 100 and I took away, I had 138 and I took away 100, what am I left with? I'm left with 38 hundredths, because 138 minus 100 is 38. So 138 hundredths is equal to 1 and 38 hundredths, like this. 1 and 38 hundredths. Now I just need to combine that with those 13 wholes I already had. So I'm just going to add them. So 13 plus the 1 whole was 14. And then 38 hundredths just gets tagged on there at the end. Now, all I simply need to do is rewrite 14 and 38 hundredths as a decimal. So my wholes stay the same. My whole numbers stay the same. 14 is 14. But instead of writing it as a fraction, I'm just going to put my decimal and write 38 hundredths. Well, it's just going to look like this. 14 and 38 hundredths. So, as you can see, we are reaching back into our old bag of tricks, going back into fractions and adding fractions and then converting if they're an improper fraction, and just using that skill to help us add two decimal numbers together. So you're going to use those old skills, combine them with new skills, and you will be on your way.